Welcome to What Happens Next, episode 67. And in this episode, I want to talk about Stoicism. Now, anybody who's listened to this podcast for a long time knows that I love Stoicism. And that's because I think some of the lessons that Stoicism teach you can help us manage change at any age of our lives, but particularly in our 50s, 60s and beyond when we're thinking about what happens next. I'm your host, Chris Dames. I'm a childhood financial planner, and I've been helping people manage that transition financially through their life and looking at how much is enough for them to live the life they want for the past 20 years. But in the past couple of years, I've been fascinated with the other elements of transitioning into what we used to call retirement, but actually is a lot more complicated now, and how we do it well. In this episode, I want to talk about a few things that the Stoics teach us that apply to our lives today. I talk about the dichotomy of control, how distinguishing between what we can control and what we can't is fundamentally important to our own mental health. Proactive well-being, whilst we can't control what happens entirely in our lives, we can take action in a lot of areas. Accepting that change is consistent and constant, and embracing flux, and looking at serving others as a way to be happier ourselves. I hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the other side. I've just finished reading this book, and in this video, I want to share the 3 Stoic lessons you can learn to help you retire more successfully or navigate what happens next. Welcome to the What Happens Next channel. Welcome to the What Happens Next channel, the channel dedicated to helping you navigate retirement or whatever happens next if you're in your 50s or 60s more successfully. I'm your host, Chris Dames, and I'm a childhood financial planner. And for 20 years now, I've been helping people plan for their retirement, retire successfully, and live successful what happens next chapters of their lives. And I find myself taking lessons from a bunch of different places, particularly from some of my favourite books and some of my favourite authors. And one of those authors is a guy called Ryan Holiday. Now, Ryan Holiday talks about Stoicism, the lessons we can learn and apply to our lives, about what the ancient Greeks and Romans learned and taught us. And I love Stoic philosophy and the lessons it can teach us. And in this video, I want to share the 3 main lessons you can learn to help you navigate what happens next in your life. I'm really curious as well about whether you're going to agree with number 2. And I'd love to know about whether you do or not in the comments. While we're here, I'd also love for you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're on a mission with What Happens Next to help you and people like you navigate successfully the next stage of their lives. And the more people who get to view our videos, the more people we actively get to help. So thank you in advance for doing that. I really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's talk about the 3 Stoic lessons you can learn to help you live a more successful retirement or whatever happens next. And number 1 is probably one of the main tenets of Stoic philosophy, focusing on what we can control. Now, I remember probably 25 years ago now, I was working at a bank and I had a client, and this client used to phone me. So at the minute, I'm spending a lot of time writing the What Happens Next book. I'm 50,000 words in as I speak to you today, and currently working to make sure that the book adds as much value as we can to people thinking about that next stage in their lives. Now, the book's not ready yet. It won't be out until sometime in 2025. I'm working hard to get it finished. But what you can do is sign up for the book waiting list, so you're one of the first people that gets access. You can simply do that by visiting whathappensnext.life/book. join the waiting list today and you'll be one of the first person to get access to the book and some extra goodies when it comes out. Every single day for probably about 3 weeks until my boss said, what are you playing at, answering that call, about their investments. And when their investments went up, as they did, they called me and said, oh, it's brilliant, it's gone up. And when they went down, they called me and said, I'm really, really worried. Now, there's a lesson to be learned there about your relationship with risk when you're thinking about your own investments. But there's also an element about thinking about what we can control and what we can't. Because the reality is, when it comes to your wealth, your health, your relationships, and many things that are going to lead to a successful retirement, there's things you can't control. However, the good news is there's plenty that we can. When it comes to our financial plan, we can control the strategy. We can build a good longer-term strategy. And whilst we can't control day-to-day markets, we can control how we react to those markets and make sure that we're taking the right action at the right time to benefit from our longer-term success. When it comes to our social well-being in retirement, and certainly my experience is that often changes when we retire. Certainly my experience from speaking to my clients is, the people they spent loads of time with at work are now in a position where they're not spending that time at work, so they're having less social connection. And I think it's scary at any stage of our life to build new social relationships. And there's elements within social relationships we can't do anything about. We actually can't do anything about what other people think or what other people do. But we can be proactive to improve our social well-being. We can text a friend. We can make that call. We can join community and social groups to help us. And again, health is one element that there's elements that we can control and there's elements we can't. We can't control often getting unwell, but we can control our own health in terms of getting good sleep, having great exercise, and making sure that our nutrition is good to maximise the opportunity for positive health moving forward. So, tip 1, don't worry about what we can't control, focus on what we can. And if we focus on what we can control in all aspects of well-being in our lives, that will lead to a retirement well lived. My second Stoic tip is accept that everything changes. And if you're thinking about retirement, that change can be really scary. It can be very, and this is my word of the video, discombobulating. I'm glad I got that out on the first take. And there's one main reason why. We fear change as humans. Actually, we've strived to get to consistency. But the reality is we need to face the fact that everything changes. And when we're retiring or thinking about what happens next, there's probably so much change going on in your lives, it's difficult to cope with. And the Stoics talked about this a lot. There was a Stoic philosopher who said, the only constant is change. And actually, the Stoics can help us think about change in a more fundamental way. Because the Stoics would say, instead of trying to fight that change, appreciate that change is going to occur whether you like it or not, and embrace that change to make sure that you're having the most successful retirement possible. And my third tip is looking at finding purpose through virtue. So the book that I've most recently read is about the Stoic principle, the Stoic virtue of justice. And it talks about the fact that we've all got the opportunity to do well and do good in our lives. And actually, that ancient philosophy is really backed up by modern science, because we know that the happiest people in the world actually give. They give their time, they give their effort, they give their energy, they give to their community. And it's why in What Happens Next we talk so much about community well-being. So what I'd suggest we do is when we're thinking about the next stage of our lives and making sure your retirement is a great one, I'd ask yourself the question, what can I do to help others? Because in my experience, in the Stoics experience, and in all of the psychological evidence, we know that well-being's improved when we try to help others. So I'd love to know what you're doing or you're thinking about in this next stage of your lives to contribute to your community. It's one of the reasons we talk so actively about community well-being on What Happens Next. Because even though we know that we might need to have social connections and we need to make sure that we've got enough money to live the lives we want, one of the under-discussed areas is how we find purpose and meaning. And the Stoics would say, as well as all the modern research, that we find purpose and meaning through the value we add to other people's lives. So, firstly, focus on what you can control, and as much as you can, don't worry about stuff you can't. Number two, in this period of fundamental change, accept that everything changes all the time, and we need to think about change as a constant in our life. And hopefully that will help you adapt to the changes you're going through when you're thinking about retirement now. And number three, look at what purpose and meaning means in this stage of your life and think about how you're going to help others to make sure that during this stage of your life, it's the most meaningful next chapter possible. So they're the three main lessons the Stoics can teach us about retirement. If you're ready now for a bit of a deeper dive to plan for your retirement or whatever happens next, we interviewed 30 people in 2024 about what a retirement life well lived looks like. And we've done a video that collates all of the tips they share that you can click on there. That's it for today. Have a lovely remainder of the week for you, wherever you're doing and wherever you are. And we'll see you next time on What Happens Next. Part of the issue we've got when we're thinking about what happens next in our lives is having the self-awareness, having the introspection to be able to think about what the gaps in our well-being are. And we're doing loads of work at the minute with What Happens Next to build solutions that are going to help you think about well-being in a nuanced way when you're thinking about how it applies to your life. One of the first things we've built that you can use today is our What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, but what it will do is give you an insight into the areas of strengths when it comes to your well-being and the areas you might want to improve. You can take the What Happens Next quiz at whathappensnext.life/quiz, and I hope it helps you in your journey to work out what happens next for you.